Good evening, friends, and welcome to another homemade feast. What we have is very boring roast chicken. Who wants to have boring roast chicken? Not us, which is why we're going to spice it up and convert this ordinary meal into something with some pizzazz and spice to it. All right, so what I have here is an ordinary roast chicken. I've searched all over for one that has flavor and taste to it and can't seem to find one. So we're just going to have to transform this into something that you and your family would love to eat. First rule, if you remember, is to remove moisture. Moisture gets in the way of flavor. So, paper towel, dab it dry. Now, making roast chicken is actually not as easy as it sounds because it has a few big challenges to it. The first one is the lack of flavor in the meat itself, so you really have to compensate for it. The second challenge is that chicken breast is very low in fat, and so it has a tendency to become dry and flavorless quickly. Chicken thighs, on the other hand, are relatively high in fat, and so they take longer to cook. So you're left with this terrible dilemma of, do I cook the breast right and have raw thighs, or do I cook the thighs right and have a really dry breast? Well, guess what? We have a solution for both. By inserting flavor and fat into the chicken breast, we're going to have delicious, succulent, juicy, flavorful chicken breast and moist, tender chicken thighs. The third challenge we have with roast chicken is the cavity inside. So when you buy a chicken, they've emptied out all the insides, which is very nice of them, but that really hinders the cooking process, because the cavity that's there acts like the exhaust of your car, pushing all the hot air out. And so the insides don't tend to cook as evenly, and all the heat goes on the outside, so you get a burnt outside and a raw inside. So, we're gonna have to stuff the inside. You can literally use anything to stuff the inside. It doesn't matter, because you're probably not going to eat it anyway. So we're just trying to fill that cavity. What I have is some fresh basil for flavor, but use any herb that you like. Some chopped up onions, give it some nice moisture, and I have some carrots lying around. These are really pretty carrots. Use any old carrots you like. And we're just gonna go and stuff it and fill that cavity. Once you've filled it with your veg, your herbs, we're gonna salt and pepper it to try to get some flavor in there as well. And then we would have taken care of at least one of the challenges with making roast chicken. Okay, so I have stuffed the cavity with some garlic, onions, sweet carrots, and a little bit of basil for freshness. Fresh salt, I use kosher coarse salt, almost always for cooking, and freshly ground pepper. Now what we have to do is prevent all that yumminess from escaping when we put it in the oven. So you take the skin that is overlapping, and you want to try to close it. I'm going to use a little toothpick to do that. It doesn't have to be complicated, just poke it in there. There we go, safe and sound. If you want to see what it looks like, it's all buttoned up nice and neat. All right, we've dealt with one of the challenges. Now we have to deal with the other one, which is the fact that this breast is going to get dry and lacks flavor. And the way we're going to address that is by stuffing it. So what you want to do is stuff it with something that has a high-ish fat content to try to even out the fat content of the breast and the thighs so they cook together. Better still is if it has fat content and lots of yummy flavors, which is why I'm using a beef chorizo today. Now, traditionally, chorizo is a Spanish pork-based sausage, but today we're going to use beef. It's got lovely aroma, lots of yummy spices in there, and slight hint of spiciness without it being hot. So this is not going to overpower things, but it's going to give it a lot of flavor and a good amount of garlic. Time to get messy, my friends. Here we go. You're going to just take the chorizo. You can use any sausage you like, and you stuff it between the skin and actual chicken breast. And you got to use your hands here, folks. There's no shortcuts for that. But look, it's part of the fun. And you'll see it'll start to lump up, so you got to use your hands to spread it around. All right, so I have stuffed about half a pound of chorizo under the skin, between the skin and the breast. You could say I've given this chicken a breast augmentation, which is not uncommon in Los Angeles. Now all we're left to do is make sure that the skin is going to be delicious, brown, crispy and flavorful. And in order to do that, we go back to something you've heard me say before. Butter makes everything better. Here I have some melted butter. I'm going to brush it generously on the skin all around. And that's going to give us a beautiful color when it's nice and roasted, and flavor, and as well it's going to act as an adhesive for the seasoning, so that the seasoning we're going to put on doesn't just run off, which is often the case. So be sure to get over, under, in between all the crevices. So when you're buttering your chicken, be sure to lift it and butter the underneath as well. You want to have nice even crispness all around, nice and buttered. Salt for flavor and crispness. The salt actually removes more of the moisture, even though we did a good job of removing it with the paper towel. So be generous with the salt. Time for some fresh ground pepper, nice and coarse. Be generous with the pepper as well. There's a lot of chicken here. I like to add a little paprika. It gives it a bit of a smoky flavor. I also like the color, that bright orangey crimson color. It looks beautiful once it's roasted. Et voila! Our chicken is ready, but it's always nice to have something to go with it, and I like to economize on having to do dishes and cleaning up. So, in my roasting pan, I have some chopped golden potatoes, straight out of the bag, peeled and cut into quarters. We're going to add some olive oil to it. You actually don't need a lot of olive oil because the chicken is going to give off so many delicious juices itself that they will flavor and act as a fat for the potatoes. Salt, don't need to be precise. Pepper. Here comes the fun part. Shake it all about. So we're shaking it so the salt, the pepper, the olive oil evenly coats our potatoes. That should do the trick. We get our roasting pan, and then gently and lovingly place our bird on the roasting pan, and it's ready to go into the oven. It could not be simpler. Put it in a preheated oven, about 350 degrees, and depending on the size of your bird, it might take an hour to an hour and 15 minutes. I suggest we check on it in about 45 minutes and see how it's getting on. All right, so our bird was pretty big, and that took about an hour and 15 minutes at 350 degrees to cook. To see whether it has cooked, I use my trusty meat thermometer. It's quite tricky to try to figure out where to prod it. If you get it in the cavity, it's going to give you the temperature of air, which you don't want. The real test is to prod it where the bone hits. So you go down, and if that bone part is 185, then it means that the meat's cooked all the way through. When you're done with that, you have to let it sit there, again, rest for 10 minutes or so that all the juices reincorporate into the meat. And here you are, crispy potatoes. Let's do the real test. Are they crispy enough? Delicious, crunchy, salty, crispy. All the delicious juices from the chicken are dripped onto them, so they've got lots of flavor. Now our next test is the breast juicy and tender. Taking a nice little slice in here. And look at that, perfectly cooked. You can actually see the juices still dripping out of it. So I would say this was a success. Stay hungry, stay happy, my friends. I hope you enjoy this with your family. Please subscribe and give me a like.